The rain came hard that night. Manhattan streets shimmered like rivers of broken glass, every puddle catching flashes of yellow cabs and red taillights bleeding into one another. Inside the Marquee, the city's most exclusive restaurant, laughter and jazz floated above the storm like nothing outside could touch it. And then the door burst open. A small girl stood there soaked through, trembling, her hair plastered to her face. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her voice cracked through the room like a lightning strike. Please, please help. My mom, she won't wake up. Every fork froze mid-air. Every glass stilled before a sip. Only one man didn't move, Dominic Vale, seated at his usual corner table, the one that gave him a clear view of both exits. The name alone carried weight in New York's underworld. Some said he ran the city. Others said he owned it. But to everyone in that room, he was danger wrapped in a 3-piece suit. Dominic's gaze lifted from his plate. For a long second, he just watched the child rain dripping from her fingertips onto the marble floor. His men stirred uneasily, expecting him to gesture for security. But he didn't. He simply raised one finger, and the room went silent. The maitre d' started to move forward, murmuring apologies to the girl, trying to usher her out before she ruined anyone's $300 dinner. But Dominic's raised hand stopped him cold. The man stepped back, eyes wide, as if that single gesture carried the power of life and death. Dominic's voice came low, even, dangerous. Let her speak. The girl's lips quivered, her chest heaving as she fought to get the words out. They're hurting her again, she stammered. I tried to make them stop, but they wouldn't. She won't wake up. The crowd stared, uneasy. Nobody dared move. Dominic leaned back slowly, cigar smoke curling around him like ghostly wings. Who's hurting her? My stepdad, she said, almost whispering. And his friends. They were drinking again. The lady at the diner told me you make bad people go away. For the first time in years, Dominic Vale didn't know what to say. His reputation, the whispers that traveled through alleys and back rooms, had reached a child. Not as a monster, but as a savior. Something cold twisted inside his chest. A memory he hadn't visited in years. Flickered a door slamming. A mother's cry. His own small hands pounding against silence. He closed his eyes for a beat. When he opened them, the decision was already made. Where do you live? West 43rd Street, she said. The yellow house with the broken door. He looked toward Marcus. The man standing behind him, broad, scarred, and loyal enough to walk through hell if asked. Get the car, Dominic ordered. And call Dr. Keller. Tell him we're making a house call. The restaurant held its breath as Dominic stood. No one spoke. No one even pretended not to watch. They all knew the moment Dominic Vale got up from a table. Something in the city was about to change. The rain hit harder as the black car slid through the streets. Inside, the girl sat wrapped in a wool coat that dwarfed her, eyes fixed on the glowing city outside. Dominic watched her, in silence, the steady drumming of rain filling the space between them. What's your name? He finally asked. Mia, she said. Her voice was small, but steady. You did good, Mia, he told her. You found the right person. She looked up at him, eyes big and wet, and painfully sincere. Are you going to hurt them? Dominic's answer came without hesitation. No, he said quietly. I'm going to make sure they never hurt you again. The yellow house came into view. A sagging 2-story caught between abandoned buildings. Neon from the corner bar spilled across the wet pavement, turning the puddles red and blue. Laughter and music bled through the cracked front windows. Marcus killed the engine. The rain fell in sheets now, turning Dominic's tailored suit dark within seconds. He adjusted his tie. Not out of vanity, but ritual like a soldier loading his weapon. Stay here, he told Mia. Her small hand gripped his wrist for a second, a silent plea. He gave a single nod, the only promise he could offer. Then he walked toward the door. It took one kick. The frame exploded inward. The laughter died instantly. 4 men froze mid-motion, beer bottles half raised, eyes squinting through smoke and confusion. Dominic Vale stood in their doorway like judgment given form. Behind him, the night pressed in cold, relentless, merciless. No one spoke. Then one of them, a heavy-set man with a mean grin, staggered forward. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Dominic didn't answer. He shrugged off his coat and folded it neatly over the nearest chair. The gesture alone was enough to make the others shift nervously. "You have 10 seconds, he said, his tone almost conversational. "To tell me why a little girl had to run through a thunderstorm to find help," the man sneered. "Mind your own business, rich boy." Dominic smiled, a faint, cold thing that didn't touch his eyes. Wrong answer. What followed wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was precise. Dominic moved like a man who'd memorized violence, each motion deliberate, efficient, final. The sound of a punch landing, a table splintering, a body hitting the wall. Then silence. By the time Marcus and the others entered, the room was a graveyard of regret. Dominic stood over the unconscious men, his expression unreadable, his breathing calm. He glanced toward the corner, where a woman lay slumped against the wall, bruised, barely conscious, but alive. "Get the doctor," he said quietly. Minutes later, Dominic carried Emma Carter through the rain himself. Her head rested against his shoulder, her skin pale under the flicker of streetlight. Mia waited in the car, face pressed to the window, hope flickering across her small frame as Dominic appeared. "Is she okay?" she asked the moment he opened the door. "She will be," he said. He laid Emma carefully across the back seat, covering her with a blanket. For a man known for cruelty, the tenderness in his movements was disarming. As the car pulled away, Mia reached out her tiny hand, finding his. "Thank you," she whispered. Dominic didn't reply. His throat was tight in a way he couldn't explain. Back at the estate, the storm's fury softened to a steady whisper against the windows. Marble floors gleamed under chandelier light. The space was silent, immaculate, expensive but lifeless, like a museum built for ghosts. Dr. Keller, a discreet physician with more loyalty than curiosity, examined Emma on a leather sofa. "Bruised ribs, mild concussion, dehydration," he said. "She'll need rest." Dominic nodded, staring at the floor. "Make sure she has everything she needs." When the doctor left, Marcus finally spoke. "You know this is bad business," he said. "Bringing civilians here. You're crossing lines we can't uncross." Dominic didn't look up. "Then we make new lines." Marcus sighed, shaking his head. "You don't do charity, Dom. You never have." Dominic lit another cigar. "Maybe it's time I start." Hours passed. The mansion's quiet swallowed every sound but the ticking of a clock. Dominic sat by the fire, glass of whiskey untouched beside him. Upstairs, Emma slept under fresh sheets. Mia curled beside her. Marcus lingered in the doorway. "You planning to keep them here?" "I'm planning to make sure they're safe," Dominic said. "Safe from who? Ray? He's nothing. You've dealt with worse." Dominic's eyes stayed on the flames. "It's not about Ray." "Then what's it about?" He finally looked up. "It's about a promise I didn't get when I was her age." Marcus studied him, realizing that this wasn't business anymore. This was personal, dangerous territory for a man like Dominic Vale. "All right," Marcus said finally. "But this will cost you." Dominic nodded once. "Everything worth doing does." The night deepened. Outside, the rain tapered into mist, the storm slowly giving way to silence. Inside the guest room, Mia stirred, waking to find Dominic standing by the window, the city lights flickering faintly through the storm. "You're still here," she said sleepily. He turned, caught off guard by how small her voice sounded in such a vast house. "I don't sleep much," he admitted. She hesitated. "Are you a bad guy?" The question hit harder than he expected. He looked at her, the bruises fading from her cheek, the stubborn spark still in her eyes. "I used to be," he said. "Maybe I still am." "Then why did you help me?" Dominic looked back at the window. Rain streaked down the glass, blurring the city beyond. "Because sometimes," he said softly, "you don't get to choose who you help. They just show up, and you know if you walk away, you'll never be able to live with yourself again." Mia nodded solemnly. "The way only children who've seen too much can." "Then you're not bad anymore." Dominic smiled faintly. "Go back to sleep, kid." When morning came, the city gleamed clean under the washed sky. The chaos of the night felt distant, unreal, like a dream fading at dawn. But something had changed. For the first time in years, Dominic Vale, the man who ruled by fear, the man who never let emotion touch business, had made a choice with no profit, no plan, no agenda. A choice that broke every rule he'd built his empire on. And as he stood at the window, watching the sunrise spill gold across Manhattan, he knew there was no turning back. He had crossed an invisible line, one that separated power from humanity, control from compassion, and there was no going home again. Morning light crept through the tall windows of Dominic Vale's mansion, soft and gold against marble that still smelled faintly of rain. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the hush of the house. Somewhere upstairs, a child's steady breathing mixed with the faint ticking of a hallway clock. It was the first sound of peace the place had heard in years. Emma Carter woke with a start. The bed beneath her was too soft, the air too still. She sat up fast, pain tugging at her ribs, memory catching up with her all at once. Ray shouting, the crash of glass, the blow that sent her into darkness. For a wild second she thought she was dead. Then she heard laughter light, unafraid, Mia's laughter. Barefoot, she followed the sound through the hall. The walls here were lined with expensive art, but everything felt cold, untouched. In the kitchen, she found her daughter perched on a bar stool far too tall for her, syrup dripping down her chin. And across the counter, sleeves rolled and tie gone, stood the man everyone in New York feared. Dominic Vale looked up from the stove, surprised by how small the woman was, the bruises at her jaw, the wary set of her shoulders. "You should still be in bed," he said. "I've had enough of beds." Her voice came rough, cracked from silence and fear. "Where are we? Someplace safe." "Safe?" Her eyes flicked to the guards outside the glass doors. "This doesn't look safe." "It's safer than where you were." She took a step closer, chin lifted. "Why would a man like you help us?" For a heartbeat he said nothing. Then, with a quiet that carried more truth than confession, he answered, "Because no one helped me when I needed it." The room went still. The words didn't belong to the man people called a monster, but they fit him more honestly than his suits ever had. Emma Carter saw it then, the crack in the armor, the shadow of someone who once knew what mercy felt like. Mia broke the silence by holding up a fork. "Mum, he made pancakes. They're good, but he puts too much syrup." Dominic gave her a look that almost passed for a smile. "There's no such thing as too much syrup," the child grinned. "You'd lose that argument in kindergarten." And somehow he laughed, a sound low and rusty, as if it had been locked away for years. By evening, the mansion had changed. Not in shape, but in spirit. The kitchen smelled of butter and sugar instead of cigar smoke. The guards softened when the little girl waved to them in the hall. Even Marcus, whose frown could stop grown men cold, found himself helping Mia hang a drawing on the refrigerator door. Dominic watched it all with quiet confusion. This was his house, his kingdom. Yet for the first time, it felt alive. That night, when Emma came downstairs in borrowed clothes, she caught him staring at the fireplace, instead of the endless stack of ledgers on his desk. "You don't strike me as the charitable type," she said. "I'm not, so why are we still here?" He turned the glass in his hand, amber light flickering through the whiskey. "Because the world outside doesn't forgive weakness. And right now, you and your daughter are weak." She bristled. "We're not your responsibility." He looked at her, then really looked. Maybe not. But she ran through the rain for help. Someone ought to show her that sometimes people actually listen. Emma studied the man who'd walked into her nightmare and made it disappear. She wanted to hate him for the power he carried so easily, but gratitude sat heavier. "And when we're strong again? Then you leave," he said simply. "And we pretend none of this happened." Days passed, marked by the small rhythms of recovery. Mia filled the silent mansion with chatter. She followed Dominic everywhere, into the garden, the garage, even his study where no one dared interrupt him. She asked about everything: his watch, the scars on his hands, the black car parked out front. He answered some questions. Others he let hang in the air until she lost interest. Yet, he found himself waiting for her laughter, for the quick patter of her sneakers on marble floors. Emma watched the strange companionship grow, and, against her instincts, let it happen. There was safety here, but something else too, a sense that this man, with all his wealth and violence, had forgotten what kindness looked like, until a 7-year-old showed him. One afternoon she caught him in the hallway, straightening one of Mia's drawings, a stick figure family labeled Me, Mom, and Mr. D. "You don't have to humor her," Emma said. "I'm not," Dominic replied. "She's a better artist than half the men who forged my signatures." That earned him the ghost of a smile. For the first time, her eyes held warmth instead of fear. Peace, however fragile, never lasted long in Dominic Vale's world. Marcus arrived late that night, coat dripping from another burst of rain. His expression said everything before his words did. "We've got a problem," he said. Dominic set down his glass. "Only one? It's a big one. Ray Carter's alive and talking. He's meeting with the Donovans." The name cut through the room like wire. The Donovan crew controlled half of Brooklyn, ambitious and unpredictable. Dominic's jaw tightened. "What's he offering them?" "Information. Claims his wife worked at one of your construction fronts. Says she knows things." A muscle in Dominic's cheek twitched. "She doesn't know a damn thing." Marcus hesitated. "Maybe not. But they believe him. And belief can get you killed faster than truth." Dominic stood. The calm that always preceded a storm settling over him. "Get the cars ready. We're moving them." "Where?" "Upstate. My grandmother's lake house. No one knows it exists." Marcus frowned. "You sure this is about protection and not—" Dominic cut him off. "Do it." The next morning, Emma found him loading bags into the back of an SUV. "What's going on?" she asked. "Field trip," Dominic said without looking at her. "I'm not leaving the city." "You don't have a choice." "I always have a choice." He turned then, eyes hard but voice low. "If you stay, they'll find you. And when they can't use you, they'll use your daughter." That stopped her. She swallowed the argument and climbed into the car beside Mia, who thought it all an adventure. "Are we going on vacation?" the girl asked. Dominic glanced back at her and managed a smile. "Yeah, kid. Something like that." The convoy slipped out of Manhattan as dawn spread over the skyline. Skyscrapers gave way to bridges, bridges to trees. The air turned cleaner the farther they drove. Mia pressed her face against the window, counting raindrops racing across the glass. Hours later, the road curved around a lake glimmering like steel under a pale sky. At its edge stood a house of stone and glass modern, quiet, somehow lonely. Emma stepped out first. The air smelled of pine and cold water. "You call this a cabin?" Dominic looked up at the house. "It's more memory than real estate." Inside, the walls were lined with photographs. An elderly woman laughing beside a boy, who couldn't be more than 10. She had Dominic's eyes, minus the ghosts behind them. "Your grandmother?" Emma asked. "She taught me everything worth knowing," he said. "Like how to tell the truth, and when not to." There was affection in his voice, rare and unguarded. It softened something in her she didn't want softened. Life at the lake house settled into its own rhythm. Mia explored the woods with a flashlight too big for her hands. Emma cooked simple meals, filling the rooms with smells that chased away the sterile scent of Dominic's mansion. And Dominic, who usually lived by calendars and codes, found himself slowing down. He'd wake early, watch the fog drift across the lake, and wonder when peace had started feeling dangerous. One evening, as dusk slid across the water, he found Emma sitting on the porch steps, knees pulled close, eyes fixed on the horizon. "You don't sleep much," he said, joining her. "Not when I'm safe," she replied. "It's harder to rest when you don't have to fight." He nodded. "I know that feeling." For a while they said nothing. Crickets hummed. Somewhere in the woods an owl called out. Then Emma spoke again, voice quieter. "You asked about Ray. Before the diner, he worked for one of your contractors. He heard things, small things, enough to make himself dangerous." Dominic turned his gaze to her. "And you?" She hesitated. "I wrote things down. Orders, faces, conversations. Not to sell them, just in case. When you live around men like him, insurance is the only currency that matters." "You kept records." "I still have them." Silence stretched between them. "That's why they want you," Dominic said at last. "Not because of Ray. Because of what you might have heard." Emma's hands tightened around her knees. "Then you shouldn't have brought us here." He shook his head. "You misunderstand. That's exactly why I did." Days blended together in the quiet of the lake. Dominic repaired the old dock. Emma tended a small garden that hadn't seen care in years. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her from the window, not with hunger, but with a kind of wondering disbelief, as if he couldn't decide whether she was a blessing or a threat. One afternoon, he returned from a call, jaw tight. Emma met him in the kitchen. "Bad news? The Donovans are testing boundaries," he said. "They hit one of my shipments. They're looking for leverage." "And we're leverage," she said flatly. His eyes met hers. "You're under my protection. That makes you untouchable." She gave a small, humorless laugh. No one's untouchable. You sound like me, he said. Maybe I'm just learning your language. Their eyes held for a beat too long before Mia burst in with a handful of wildflowers, demanding vases and attention. The moment broke, but not completely. Night after night, they talked. About small things at first, coffee preferences. Books neither had time to read. But each conversation dug deeper. Dominic told her about his father, a violent drunk who'd vanished when he was 13. About his mother, who tried to protect him until protection ran out. And about the grandmother who raised him in this very house, teaching him discipline, teaching him never to beg for mercy again. She wanted me to be good, he said one night, voice low. I wanted to be safe. They're not the same thing. Emma listened, eyes soft. Maybe you can be both now. He smiled faintly. Maybe. Then she told her own story, how she'd left college when she got pregnant. How Ray's charm curdled into rage. How survival turned her into someone who watched everything, remembered everything. People think waitresses don't hear, she said. But they tell us everything. Business deals, affairs, dirty secrets. They forget we exist the moment they stand up from the table. You remember too much, he said. It's the only thing I'm good at. That's not true. She looked up, surprised. How would you know? Because your daughter laughs like she's never been afraid. That doesn't happen by accident. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Dominic stood, poured himself another drink, and said softly, Get some sleep, Emma. Tomorrow might not be this quiet. In the days that followed, quiet became its own kind of tension. Dominic's men patrolled the forest roads. Marcus called twice a day with updates. Each report painted the same picture. The Donovans circling closer. Ray Carter playing both sides like a man too stupid to realize he'd already lost. But inside the lake house, time slowed. Mia built forts out of blankets. Emma sang while she cooked. Dominic found himself staying at the table longer after meals, listening to them talk about nothing at all. For the first time, he understood the danger of comfort. It made you forget how brutal the world could be. The night before it all changed, the air turned still, heavy with the promise of another storm. Emma stood by the window, arms crossed, watching lightning flash far off across the lake. Dominic joined her, glass in hand. Looks like rain again, he said. Seems fitting, she replied. He studied her reflection in the glass. You're not afraid anymore. I'm tired of being afraid, he nodded slowly. That's how it starts. How? What starts? Becoming someone new. She turned toward him, and for once, neither of them looked away. Outside, thunder rolled over the water, soft and distant, like a warning. And for a little while longer, the world was calm. Too calm. The kind of peace that always breaks before the storm. Dominic Vale, man of power, of control, of carefully measured violence, had begun to change. Humanity was clawing its way back through the cracks. But the world he lived in didn't forgive redemption. Not yet. The first hint of trouble came with a phone call that broke the quiet of the lake house. Marcus's voice carried through, static, low, and sharp. They want to sit down. The Donovans. Tomorrow night. Warehouse District. Says it's about peace. Dominic didn't answer right away. He watched the rain drift across the lake, slow and steady, tapping against the glass like a warning. Peace, he said finally. That word always sounds like a lie. Marcus exhaled. Ray Carter's name came up in the invitation. The silence stretched long. Dominic's expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to shift. Of course it did, he murmured. Every story ends where it began. He hung up and stared at his reflection in the dark window. The man looking back wasn't the same one who'd ruled the city by fear. His eyes had softened, but behind them still burned the cold calculation of survival. Behind him, Emma appeared in the doorway. What's wrong? Business, he said. You mean danger? He turned, tired smile on his face. In my world, they're the same thing. She stepped closer. You don't have to go. Yes, he said quietly. I do. Why? After everything, why walk back into it? Because if I don't, he said, it'll find us here. I built this world, Emma. I have to end it myself. The next night, the city smelled of rain and metal. The warehouse district sprawled like a graveyard for forgotten promises. Dominic arrived, dressed not for war, but for negotiation, crisp suit, steady eyes. Yet inside him, something heavy had settled. The acceptance that redemption always came with a cost. Marcus waited by the door. You sure about this? No, Dominic said. But I'm going anyway. Inside, the air was thick with tension. 2 Donovan lieutenants stood near the crates, hands twitching near their coats, and there, half hidden behind them, was Ray Carter. Dominic took in the sight. The uneven stance, the bruised ego trying to wear confidence like a suit that didn't fit. Ray smiled. Small and mean. Didn't expect you to show, Vale. Word is you've gone soft. Playing house with my wife and kid. Dominic's tone stayed calm. You should have stayed gone, Ray. Ray's laugh was sharp. You think you can erase me? I've got insurance now. Police, Donovans, they all want a piece of your kingdom. I just gave them the map. Dominic studied him, unblinking. You always were a coward who mistook noise for power. That was when the first siren wailed. For a heartbeat, everyone froze. Then chaos erupted. Police lights bled red and blue through the cracked windows. Doors crashed open. Shouts filled the air. The peace meeting was a trap one baited by Ray, and blessed by men with badges. Bullets tore through the warehouse. Marcus shouted for cover. Dominic ducked behind a steel beam, the world exploding around him in flashes of light and thunder. Amid the smoke, he saw movement, a figure at the far door. Emma. She'd followed him. Mia's small shape was clutched in her arms, terror etched across her face. Time stopped. Dominic moved before thought could catch him. He ran through the hail of gunfire, caught them both, drove them to the ground behind a stack of crates. Why are you here? He demanded. Emma's eyes burned with fear and fury. You don't get to die for us alone. He wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. Another round cracked overhead. Marcus returned fire. Sirens howled closer. Then came Ray's voice, cutting through the noise. Come out, Vale. Let's end this. Dominic turned. Ray stood near the doorway, pistol shaking in his hand, face twisted by hatred and fear. You ruined my life, Ray shouted. You took my family. Dominic rose slowly, body between Ray and the women behind him. You gave them away, he said. The gun went off. Pain seared across Dominic's arm. He didn't flinch. Before Ray could fire again, another shot echoed, not Dominic's. One of the officers, caught in the chaos, returned fire. Ray's body jerked, once, twice, and then fell. The silence that followed was deafening. Smoke drifted through broken glass. The rain outside had turned heavy again, washing streaks of blood into the concrete cracks. Dominic sank to his knees beside the fallen man. There was no triumph in his face, only weariness, the kind that comes when a story's ending writes itself in violence no one wanted. He turned back to Emma and Mia. It's over, he said. His voice broke a little. It's finally over. But peace never comes easy to men like him. Within minutes, flashlights and shouting filled the air. Police swarmed the warehouse, guns leveled, hands forced behind backs. Dominic didn't resist. He let them cuff him, his eyes never leaving, the woman and child being led away to safety. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and wet concrete. Dominic sat alone, cuffs biting into his wrists. His suit was torn, streaked with blood that wasn't all his. Detective Rains entered, the kind of man who thought calm made him dangerous. You've been busy, Vale, he said. Half the city's waiting to see if you finally fall. Dominic looked up. Expression unreadable. I'm tired of falling. Try something new. Rains dropped a file on the table. Photos spilled out. The warehouse. The bodies. Ray Carter's gun. You killed him. He shot first. Rains snorted. Convenient story. Convenient truth. The detective leaned in. Men like you don't get to claim self-defense. You built this mess. Dominic met his gaze, steady and cold. Then maybe cleaning it up is part of the sentence. Rains hesitated, thrown off balance by the lack of arrogance, the absence of fear. He gathered the photos, flipped open a report, and sighed. Body cam footage confirms your version. The officer who fired the fatal shot wasn't you. He paused. Looks like you walk, Vale. Dominic's lips curved faintly. No one really walks free, detective. Some of us just get further than others. When they released him that afternoon, the city looked different. Brighter, somehow. Or maybe he was just seeing it for the first time without the tint of power. Days passed. Then weeks. The mansion felt cavernous now, echoing with silence instead of laughter. The staff spoke in whispers, as if afraid to disturb a ghost. Dominic moved through it like a man haunting his own life. The empire still stood. The businesses ran. The accounts grew fatter. But the victory felt hollow. Power, he realized, was just another cage, and this one he'd built himself. Then, one rainy evening, the doorbell rang. No guards, no cars in the drive. Just a single envelope slid beneath the door. He picked it up. The handwriting was uneven but careful. Mia says, "Every hero deserves dinner. 7 p.m. No guards." Dominic read it twice, before the meaning sank in. He found the apartment easily small building on the Lower East Side, paint peeling, windows glowing warm against the grey evening. The hallway smelled of garlic and laughter. When the door opened, Mia was there, barefoot, grinning up at him. "I told Mom you'd come." He crouched, meeting her eyes. "Did you now?" "She made spaghetti," she said proudly. "And I made the garlic bread. I didn't burn it this time." He smiled, genuine and unguarded. "Then, I couldn't miss it." Emma appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She wore no jewelry, no makeup, just peace. The bruises were long gone, replaced by color in her cheeks. "You found us," she said. "You left a map," he answered, holding up the note. She laughed softly. "Sit. Eat. For once. No business." The table was small, cluttered with mismatched plates, supermarket flowers in a chipped glass. But it felt more like home than any chandeliered dining hall he'd ever owned. Dinner was simple spaghetti, garlic bread, a cheap bottle of wine, but it tasted like forgiveness. Mia filled the space with chatter. Stories from school, new friends, things only a child would think to share. Dominic listened, smiling more than speaking, soaking in a world he'd never thought he deserved to see. After dessert store-bought cookies, half-burned Emma leaned back, studying him. "So what happens now?" He looked around the small room, the laughter, the warmth, the quiet joy. Then back at her. "Now?" he said. "Now I live differently." "You think that's possible?" He nodded slowly. "I think tonight proves it." Mia yawned, curling up on the couch. The rain outside deepened, soft against the windows. Dominic stood to leave, but Emma caught his hand. "You can stay, you know. Just for the rain." He hesitated, then sat again. The thunder rolled distant and low, not threatening anymore, just a heartbeat in the sky. For the first time in years, Dominic Vale didn't feel the need to look over his shoulder. He watched the rain slide down the glass, each drop catching the glow of city lights. Once, storms had meant blood, cleansing through destruction. Tonight, it just meant renewal. Mia stirred in her sleep and murmured, "Good guys always win, right?" Dominic smiled, voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes, kid. Sometimes they just stop losing." And as the rain fell steady outside, he let himself believe it. If this story moved you, if you felt every heartbeat of Dominic's redemption, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves a good crime story with soul. And drop a comment below. What would you have done in Dominic's place? Your thoughts, your voice, your support, that's what keeps stories like this alive. And hey, if you want more dark, emotional dramas about second chances and human redemption, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story might just hit closer to home.